For 75 years, the Iroquois Amphitheater has gathered generations of family and friends for countless hours of entertainment and enchantment under the stars.
I think there's just an energy about this place that is a calming energy, that's a fun energy. It used to be you'd really dress up to come in here. Now people come out very casual. It's very family-oriented, very family fun.
You could hear an incredible orchestra, 60-piece orchestra, that you didn't hear at other places. And then you looked up into the sky and there were stars, and the breeze would come by and you'd hear a few crickets.
You just have to experience it and feel it, but you do feel it when you come in. Maybe a combination of the history and the character of the architecture and just the sense of, you know, the performers that have been on this stage.
Built under the Federal Works Progress Administration, construction began in April 1938. It was completed in just 75 days. And on July 4th, the amphitheater was ready to welcome its first audience for a performance of the Victor Herbert operetta, Naughty Marietta. 3 other musicals followed that first season: Rose Marie, The Mikado, and Rio Rita. From the very beginning, the Iroquois Amphitheater inspired community spirit, and civic leaders stepped up to make it happen. Local historian Tom Owen.
Clearly it was rooted in the South End, but it was a broad civic enterprise. For instance, the first president of the Theatrical Association that did the summer musicals that started that first season 75 years ago was president of Belknap Hardware. And clearly, a major promotional arm for the popularization of the Iroquois Amphitheater came from the Courier-Journal Louisville Times, with Barry Bingham Sr. personally involved in promoting events here. So it was a broad civic promotion and not just a neighborhood-based event. I mean, this was a center for broad community pride and became a iconic destination, both by automobile and streetcar bus.
The amphitheater became a destination place indeed, a star-studded place where you could see the likes of Jeanette MacDonald, Don Amici, Audrey Meadows, Gene Barry, and Gordon McCrae. In time, when show producers started tapping the tremendous amount of local talent, you could see family members, friends, and neighbors joining the ranks of singers, dancers, musicians, and stagehands. Because strong community time and talent were always part of the amphitheater's success story.
When I was little growing up, I would hear my family talk about the amphitheater because my great-aunt Dolores Schaefer was a seamstress. And she would come out here when all the stars came to town because she would do their costumes. And she would have to be here when the shows were going on to repair anything that might need to be repaired or take in or take out. And my mother and her cousins would come out here and they would iron the costumes for all of them. I remember them talking about meeting Rosemary Clooney and some of the other stars. So I've known about the amphitheater since I was crawling.
After a couple decades, however, even big-name stars couldn't keep the amphitheater from feeling the strain of competition from a new entertainment craze called television that was keeping people at home, and air conditioning that lured them indoors during the hot summer months. But once again, it was the strength of community, the arts lovers and amphitheater neighbors who wouldn't give up.
75 years for an institution such as this is a long, long time. A lot of theaters around the country don't make it this long. It's had a very exciting history, a very mixed history. It's been a major institution to this part of town, and not only to this part of town, but I think to the whole city.
Mary Lou Northern was the founding president of the Iroquois Amphitheater Association, an organization formed to help revive the venue from a period of decline that occurred through the 1960s and early 70s.
In 1974, when Harvey Sloan asked me to engage in helping and working with his wife, Kathy, to bring the amphitheater back, I lived about 2 blocks from here, so I walked up. Before I said yes, I walked up to see it. And all by myself. I think I had, nope, didn't have children then, but walked up all by myself and came in, and vandals had destroyed many of the seats. The weather had rotted those that weren't vandalized. The stage looked like it had been bombed. But there was something about it that just caught my imagination, and I knew then that I couldn't say no to him.
Northern was one of many dedicated citizens who did whatever it took to help get the amphitheater on its feet again. Barbara Nichols was another.
And it was truly a community effort. Even though you don't necessarily want to call it community theater, it really was, because people came and they worked, and everything was volunteer pretty much in the beginning, and it continued to be that way for a long time. Even the concessions were volunteer. The box office was volunteer. The front of house was volunteer. People helped with sets and costumes, and you know, it was truly, people had ownership in the shows, and I think that's what probably, it had a heart, and the community they had a sense of pride about what they were doing.
Community pride, dedication, and talent is at the heart of this place. It's always been so much more than just a place to see a show. It quickly became part of the social fabric of this city. Stephanie Buzan and Rosemary McCandless are the authors of A View from the Top, The Neighborhoods of Iroquois Park and Kenwood Hill.
I think that the amphitheater is not just a performance venue, but it's a gathering venue, because when there is a show at the amphitheater, and I was just saying a little earlier that when I come down here for a show, I see people from the neighborhood, but I also see people that I work with that are from all over Louisville, so it's really drawing in people. And the shows make great memories, but the connections that you make and the conversations that you have and just the good time that you have, it really all works together to make it that gathering place and makes it a lot of fun.
Rosemary?
And I think, as she said, the community and the gathering, but there's something about that open air and being out under the stars, and it makes it more casual, more friendly, where in a regular theater you might not stop and visit with each other, but here you see each other in the concession lines, you see each other coming in, you visit before the show or at intermission, you feel free to get up and wander around because it's outside, it's in a park, it's a whole different atmosphere. And it does draw the people in together, and you find yourself talking to strangers that are sitting by you and discussing what you're seeing. So it's a very different feel when you're in an amphitheater than when you're in a regular theater.
Stephanie Buzan and Rosemary McCandless were also instrumental in making sure the amphitheater was honored with an official Kentucky historical marker, erected to commemorate both the history of the theater itself as well as its origins as a WPA project. As this historic venue began to show its age, however, modest repairs and improvements would be made. Mike Heitz, director of Louisville Metro Parks and Recreation, worked for Parks earlier in his career too, at the very time that the amphitheater was poised for a rebirth.
Actually, the first job I had coming out of college was at Louisville Metro Parks. And the title was Assistant Parks Engineer, but the actual work that I did was Project Manager. I'm an architect by profession, and I worked on a lot of the capital projects in the Parks Department. And one of the first one was at the Iroquois Amphitheater. And it was one of the renovations that we did, one of the many renovations that was done at the theater at the time. I think that was in 1974 when we started it. And that's when we did what we call a sound bridge or a light bridge that was designed to go up, over, and across the front of the stage, actually over the orchestra pit. And that was able to put the lights and the speakers at the top of that bridge so it would project out into the audience itself. And we also put in new seating during that period. So it was a mini renovation, but that was one of the first. But what a beautiful facility it was.
By the 1980s, a series of renovations to the facility and an energetic and passionate group of citizens had the amphitheater delighting a new generation with summer musicals, concerts, and other special events, and pulling in a new generation of performers and artists.
Well, the first time I ever heard about the Iroquois Amphitheater was after I'd moved here as an adult, and it was through my involvement with a lot of theater people in town through other theaters. And I was told about the amphitheater, but I had not been out here until I actually got cast in a show. So the first time I actually came to the amphitheater, I was in a show. And of course, after that, I was hooked and came back all the time because I love the space, I love the experience, and it's just a real treasure here in Louisville. But it was just a terrific, open, inviting space. And what was also remarkable to me is when I would come and do shows here, the house would fill up. So you were playing to, thousands of people, which is very exciting to a performer. And one of the few opportunities here in this town to get to do that, even still. So it was great fun to be here and experience it that way, and then have that much more appreciation for it when I would come back and be a theater watcher, theater viewer.
Jim Hesselman directed several shows at the amphitheater for Music Theatre Louisville and has many cherished memories of his experiences there.
I remember those nights with people, young performers, getting to perform on the stage, sometimes through camp, sometimes through being in the chorus, grade school, middle school, high school kids, and then after the show, they would go out, they were all funneled out one stage door, and it was like Broadway, because there were maybe 60 or 70 people, family members, friends, community people that were so impressed, that applauded, that wanted autographs, that probably affected their notion whether they became an actor ever again throughout their lives. Whether they went into the theater or not, it affected them for the rest of their lives, and I know it did, this positive reinforcement. I remember getting Mary Rogers, Richard Rogers' daughter, to come out during Once Upon a Mattress, and her getting up at 4:30 in the morning and coming out to the amphitheater, totally dark. The kids had slept on the stage all night, and she stayed with us through every news interview, through every television stations recording of the performance. I think for 3-4 hours. Richard Rogers' daughter stayed with us on stage and sat on the Once Upon a Mattress set, and then she went up into the pavilion right across in the back of the amphitheater and talked to the cast, just her and my cast. I remember things like that that you couldn't replace.
While the amphitheater was enjoying its rebirth, plans were already underway to take it to a whole new level, to create a truly state-of-the-art performance venue through a major renovation project. And again, it came down to community persistence and desire mixed with political will to make it happen.
My father was an alderman back in the 80s, and then he went on to be a state representative, and he was over this area with the park. And he led the charge in the state to get the money to start the renovations here at the park. And the amphitheater became known as the State Amphitheater in order for it to get the funding. So he worked with the city and the county at that time to get some matching funds. And they did this wonderful renovation, putting the roof on, which allows more activities to come here, because so many people were hesitant to come because if it rained, their equipment would get wet, people wouldn't come to the show. But with the roof on it, it just opened up a whole new door.
Jerry Brown has since retired as an assistant director for Metro Parks, but while still with the city, he oversaw the 2003 renovation of the amphitheater.
I really want to compliment Jim Walters and the Bravura architectural firm for their hours and hours of diligent drafting and redesigning and concept after concept, and many of these plans were shown to the public in early stages to kind of help build this ultimate design. Well, of course, one of the most important features of the original amphitheater was this Kenwood siltstone material that was throughout the amphitheater, and it was real important for us to use that. We retained a lot of the original stone, and then we had to supplement that with very similar material from southern Indiana, where we found a quarry to try to match that. It was quite a job even to find matching material. But that was I think the main feature that we really worked was to retain this character and then expand that into the columns and things to keep that feel. And in the addition of the roof, it was important to have materials that combined appropriately with that stonework. So we came up with the more rustic, big, heavy timbers, sort of a lodge style from a national park of that era or something is kind of what the model for this was.
So I thought it was an excellent renovation. I think the fact that they added the roof that covered basically 3/4 of the seating, the fact that it was high enough, kept giving you that open, airy feeling, but yet it didn't distract from the original architecture of the building itself. So I think it added to the historic feel, the historic flavor, but yet modernized it in such a way that made it more usable for and more pleasurable for the different people that came to witness the different productions.
That major renovation ushered in a new era for the Iroquois Amphitheater, which has hosted more concerts by nationally known performers and emerging artists, while still retaining its historic charm and its role as a community-based resource for showcasing local artists.
Performers really like being out here. One of the things that makes it a great outdoor venue is the air conditioning on stage, which takes some of the bite out of outdoor theater. But artists really love it. You know, it's an intimate space, even though it is a pretty big amphitheater. We have people like Corey Smith who love to come back year after year. It has a really special quality that I think the audience, of course, knows, but artists respond to as well. One of the ways that we blend the past and the present today is with making sure that theater is a part of what we do here. Gilbert and Sullivan, we were just doing the Pirates of Penzance and HMS Pinafore last year here in our 75th year, and making sure that theater and the arts are always a part of what the Iroquois Amphitheater is about, even while we're doing a lot of these big ticket, high profile concerts like REO Speedwagon and an Alice Cooper and things like that. The amphitheater is definitely a source of pride for the South End. I mean, it's really an icon, a cultural icon, as well as certainly an economic engine for the South End. I think it's really got a special place in people's hearts out here who have stuck with it through ups and downs over 75 years, and without whom we would not be successful.
Because you saw everyone from Louisville at one time or another during the summer. They would come out. They'd bring their kids, they'd bring their family, and they'd tell you the stories. You know, my parents brought me here, or I was in this show, and you know, you didn't just get ushered to your seat. You talked to these people, and they became part of the family out here.
So the spectacle of 60 musicians playing, maybe 120 people out on the stage singing, dancing, and acting, and you're sitting there eating popcorn with your kids in your shorts, where else could you do that? And so it was this community effort that would seat 1,500 to 2,000 people. It was camaraderie, it was showing up like showing up at the fireworks, like going for a huge family picnic, along with appreciation of the arts and theater and music and orchestra. That's totally unique, and it's very rare today.
What's special about it for me is, and I'm not sure I'm the right, and I'm not an etymologist, so I may not have the correct insect, but I call them crickets. Whatever it is up in the woods that are singing with us, that's one of the things that's etched in my experience. That is the interplay between what's on stage and what's in the chorus behind the backdrop in the woods on Iroquois Hill, joining in. And so that interplay between nature and organized performance is what I think enriches the experience here. It's outdoor theater.
Well, I think one of my favorite times out here was a version of the Music Man. The Music Man was done out here a number of times, but this I think was in the late 90s, and I did the Music Man with my son. And I thought that was representative of the kind of family atmosphere that goes on out here, and the fact that, and we were not alone. I mean, there were plenty of mothers and mothers and their children in these shows. So, but it made it special for me, and I hope for my son. I hope he wasn't embarrassed to be in the play with his mother. But we had great fun, and it was sort of a nice arc in our relationship. But of course, like a lot of people who performed out here, some of my really stark memories are things like swallowing a fly when you're in mid-song, and I only missed 2 notes. But it burned all the way down.
When people from other areas come here, especially if they've moved to Louisville and have never been here before, they're like, wow, I was out at the amphitheater. Have you ever been there? And I'm like, yes, it's almost in my backyard because I just live on the other side of the park. And it's just amazing to see what people say about it. It certainly is unique, and it has enhanced the park, and it gets people coming back to the park.
The beauty of the architecture, the style of the renovation, the fact that acoustically it's about as good as you can get, and the lighting works excellent in the facility. So it's that combination, and again, being more of a neighborhood size that brings people. It's something special, and once they've been there, I think they've been hooked and they keep coming back.
I think it's in some ways in its prime. The 30s and 40s people say where it's prime, but no, I think it's in its prime right now, and I hope its prime continues for another 50 years. You know, it's just, and I think it will. I mean, these parks have been here since 1890, and there's no reason to think this amphitheater won't be here in 2090, and that people like us, maybe our great-great-grandchildren will be sitting here thinking, wow, look at this place.
The Iroquois Amphitheater has given many lasting gifts through the years, cultivating appreciation for the arts, building the audiences of tomorrow, generating fun and excitement, touching lives. As we look forward to the next era of gathering under the stars at the Iroquois Amphitheater, all those memories remain, even as new ones are ready to be made.